Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Alex in Merrimack, New Hampshire.
In where?
Oh, excuse me, Merrimack. I mispronounced that completely. Not that that improved anything, but Merrimack, New Hampshire. When watching the Steiner brothers, I'm struck by how underrated bump takers they were.
Oh.
Scott's scary bump at WrestleMania 9 versus the Head Shrinkers comes to mind. Rick doing a belly-to-belly to an opponent while on top of Tatsumi Fujinami's shoulders.
Yeah.
Are they underrated on how innovative and realistic they were? And I guess he left it out at the end, but it was all over the title of this, and taking bumps, I guess, specifically.
Yes, they were underrated when you look back. Well, I don't say they were underrated. They were so much better than we realized at the time once we had wrestlers of that caliber taken away from us. But if you go back and look at the early 90s Steiners were the best babyface tag team in the business.
They're amazing. You go back and watch those matches, it's like nothing else in wrestling. It's incredible.
Yeah, because they were both not only incredible athletes, but they could come up with that shit that they could invent on the fly, and both of them were strong enough to pull anything they wanted to do off, no matter what size of their opponent. And talk about the bumps, the scary bumps. They looked like they didn't take classic wrestling school bumps. And, of course, it caught up with them eventually because both Rick and Scott, they've had their physical issues and, they're a little stumped up and stove up or whatever, but they were in such good shape. They were so jacked up. And they threw themselves into everything. The only thing I can think similar to a Steiner bump is like Buzz Sawyer, who was built similar and had a similar physical toughness to him, just a complete prick and not as good of people. But he would just fling himself through the ropes to the concrete. And he didn't care where he landed. And it always, even though the Steiners were in control, they had a way of looking like they were out of control when they were taking those bumps. And you'd be scared and oh shit. But then if you really watched them and paid attention and noticed, you'd see that they took a lot of those bumps the same way every time. They're doing it on purpose. It just nobody else could get away with that. They'd break every bone in their body. But between, Scotty being so strong, such a moose that he can belly to belly fucking Ray Candy, but then leap up and do that Frankensteiner freestanding. And, and Rick, we've said, the only reason that Rick kind of became known as the other Steiner when Scotty became a single is because Rick came a little bit earlier, and a lot of people didn't see some of his best stuff in Louisiana or right when he came to Crockett. But he was tremendous as well, and Rick actually was probably not only a little bit better worker, but had the personality of the team when they were together, because Scotty didn't turn into superstar Billy Graham until much later on. But Rick, the dog-faced gremlin, he was the fucking star of the team when they first got together. But yeah, just work-wise, and they'd never hurt you unless they might have wanted to. But, let's face it, they could have had their way with Bobby and Stan, the Midnight Express, at any point in time. And we had some of our best matches with them. And never potatoed anybody. And were, like I said, strong enough to put you where you needed to be, where you were taken care of. And they loved working with us because we would cheat and attack them from behind, or use my racket, or use an object, or, in some way not just outman them like the other bigger teams may have wanted to do. They always wanted the skyscrapers or whatever. They wanted to test the Steiners. Well, we weren't testing anybody. We were taking bumps and having a great match with them. And then when the time came, they'd sell their ass off for us. The Steiners and the Road Warriors sold more and better for the Midnight, who were the smallest guys they'd wrestle, than anybody else. And the reason for that was because by the time the match was over, they realized, both teams, that the Midnight had given them the best match they'd had in a while. and put them over more and done their shit and never taken advantage of them by taking over face to face. It was always a heel move or whatever. So, anyway, that was the thing is Steiners and Road Warriors and guys like that, as baby faces, you needed to have a really devious heel team to put the match together right, and then they could do all their shit. But when they're up against, the Skyscrapers or the Barbarian and Warlord or whoever the fuck is as big as they are and as strong as they are, it was unwieldy because everybody had Doc and Gordy. Those were some fucking, ball buster matches. But it was more stiff shit and everybody trying to get their stuff in. You remember seeing some of those.
If you go back and you watch the Steiner brothers between mid-1989 and at least 92, although I would argue you can go to at least 94, they're the most remarkable tag team of that era. And those matches, when you watch them now with a modern eye, after watching AEW Dynamite every week or watching Raw, it stands out just how spectacular they were, how over they were. Even when the crowd started going down because WCW was run so poorly, people were losing their fucking minds for the Steiner brothers. They were super over, they were believable, and they should be in any Hall of Fame that covers tag team wrestling because they were, and it was ignored for a long time, but they were, post-Midnight Express, the best domestic tag team for several years.
Yeah. And they didn't get a run like they should have in the WWF. When they came up, they started in 92 because they were there when we got there, right? I think they had signed a 1-year contract.
The very, very, very end of 92, early 93, because they finished up in WCW at the end of 92. They had problems with Watts.
That's right. So they go up to New York, and by the time that we get there in July, they're the tag team champions. And we had that match with them at SummerSlam in their hometown, Auburn Hills, Detroit. That tore the house down, and their family was there and the whole thing. And I'm thinking, wow, we could do a nice program with them. And they liked working with Tom and Jimmy because it was the same flavor as the Midnight, and we had history. So, again, if you go back and watch that tag match at SummerSlam, you can tell the Steiners are loving this shit because they got to do different shit with, a Southern style heel tag team that took bumps. And then I got them booked in Smoky Mountain. SummerSlam was the end of August. They were
September '93.
Well, no, it was October is when they came to Smoky Mountain. SummerSlam was August 30th, right?
That's right. I thought the Steiners were in September. You're right. It was October.
No, it was the first week of October.
With Sherry.
Exactly. Sherry Martel was there to manage Tracy Smothers against Brian Lee with Tammy. And then the main event was the Smoky Mountain Tag title. And I wanted to have the WWF Tag Team title on the line. But I'd got the Steiners booked, and then I got to TV, and Pat Patterson came up to me and said, I've got to talk to you. We're going to switch the belts and put the belts on the Mountie. And who was
the Quebecers.
The Quebecers, yeah. And he said, but you can still have the Steiners, but we can't have the WWF tag. I said, all right. Thank you anyway. And so then I went and talked to the Steiners, and they said, well, they weren't happy about it. There was some business going on with them in the office that I don't know exactly what the deal was, but that's apparently why they took the belts off of the Steiners. Steiners weren't happy about losing the belts, especially. I don't think they possibly got along with Jacques. I could be wrong.
They wouldn't be the first.
They wouldn't be the first. But anyway, so they said, well, we don't know whether we're going to be here too much longer. And I'm like, oh, shit. Well, are you going to make? Oh, yeah, we'll make your towns. I had them for 4 days. Knoxville, Johnson City, Barberville, and God damn it, I forget where. But anyway, originally, when it was going to be the WWF Tag Team title on the line, I was just going to disqualify the bodies across the board. We're obviously not going to switch the WWF Tag Team title. And since it was a Smoky Mountain Tag Team title, which the bodies were, obviously still I've got a visiting tag team champions, even if they're title or ex-tag team champions. Now their titles aren't on the line, but it's the Steiner brothers. I'm not just going to say, okay, guys, we'll beat you 4 straight. So I pitched the idea. I said, we got the TV cameras. What about if we do a different finish each night? You go over the first night, we go over the second night, you get disqualified the third night, we just get disqualified the fourth night. Everybody comes out of it even, and we can maybe bring this back. And they said, well, the only problem with that is we ain't going to do any jobs because we don't know what the fuck they're doing with us up there, and we may be going back to Japan. I said, all right, in that case, get Arnold out of the car. And that's when we brought Arnold the pit bull in, and he was their manager, and we just did DQs every night, and the people loved seeing the dog chase me and the heavenly bodies around.
Does Arnold get a payoff?
Arnold did get paid, as a matter of fact. I had to Hildebrand go out and get Arnold a big fucking sack of dog food. But anyway, so that's, and then within a few weeks, they were gone from the WWE. So they didn't even stay the year, I don't think. And whatever the falling out was and all that bullshit, that's what they left and went back to Japan.
And that's kind of the end of the glory period of the Steiner brothers, the end of the WWF run. That's really the end of it. And then Scott got really big and it changed the way he worked and injuries started settling in and eventually they broke up and we saw what happened. But for a few years there, for a 5-year run, they were the best team in the United States. But, Jim, they looked very different. Scott had a lot of hair on his head.
Yep.
Didn't have a lot of hair on his face at that time, and also his body looked like he must have been shaving himself down. Rick, a very hairy man.
Rick was a hairy man. Rick had hair all over his body. He had hairy balls, he had hairy armpits, he had hairy knuckles.
Didn't know you were going to go right there, but...
Yeah, he was a hairy fella. But I'll tell you what, folks, you don't have to be.
Oh, you don't.
You do not have to be so hirsute. You do not have to be covered with foliage from head to toe. You don't have to be shaggy. You don't have to be all stinky and covered with mildew because all the sweat mixes in with all of your crotch hair and all that white cheese starts forming everywhere in your folds and in the nether regions. That has an odor, too, because it's mildew. And it's actually, well, it's sort of like you're cooking blue cheese down in your crotch.
Oh, come on.
Well, folks, but it's fresh ball fall. It's the season of pumpkin spice and making sure your crotch looks nice. That means sipping cider in a fall breeze and using Manscaped products to trim your balls with ease. Folks, that's right. Today's program is brought to you possibly for the last time by our fine friends at Manscaped, a company here to make sure that your foliage isn't the only thing shedding its excess leaves. I'm telling you now, it always makes the tree trunk look bigger in fall when the leaves fall off. If you clear out all the brush around the tree, it's standing there loud and proud. And folks, whether you're brand new to the program or you've already been with us, you've already tasted the Manscaped products, you could use the crown jewel of care for your family jewels, what they've come out with now, the Platinum Package 4.0. I'm telling you what, it's a 10-part package. And Brian, you know that you love to have a 10-part package. There's the Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer. That comes in, it's got the LED light. My God, it reduces the nicks and the cuts and the slashes and the self-mutilation that you can go through with some items. Also, the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. So you can clear your ears and your nose out, and you can hear better, and you can smell better. Well, you're going to smell better. You want other people to smell better when you clear your nose out. And also in the Platinum Package 4.0, the Ultra Premium Body Wash, the Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner, the aluminum-free Ultra Premium Deodorant, or as our friends across the pond would say, aluminium-free. I didn't even know that there was aluminum in deodorant, but they have got now deodorant with no aluminum in it. Maybe that's what happened to the Tin Woodsman. Do you think that's it? He was using deodorant with aluminum in it, and it just went too far.
Maybe that's what happened to Tim Woods.
There you go. And Also, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, that's in the Performance or the Platinum Package 4.0, and they'll throw in 2 free gifts, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag, which are both specifically made to hold your goodies. So, folks, these products are guaranteed to be hits for your dangly bits. So, go to manscaped.com right now, get 20% off and free shipping with the code DRIVE on the Platinum Package 4.0. 20% off, free shipping, manscaped.com when you use the code DRIVE. And do not have blue cheese in your crotch this fall, because heaven knows we don't want to have to put any chicken wings down there and get all that sauce down. That could be, boy, chicken wing sauce on your taint. That would be a difficult thing to come back from.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a good idea.
So don't dip your chicken wings in the blue cheese that you're growing in your crotch. Get the Platinum Package 4.0 from Manscaped and make things nice and slick and clean.